for 45 years, there has been a war in this country waged by the corporate elite against the working class of America. As a result of that war against the working class by the corporate elite, what we have seen is the decimation of working families all across this country, while the wealthiest people and largest corporations have done phenomenally well. What you know and what I know is that the only way we rebuild the crumbling middle class is when we rebuild the trade union movement in this country.
I want you to think about an America in which we have an explosion of union membership. So our job is to grow the trade union movement. Our job is to put together an unprecedented grassroots movement of working people all over this country. And when we do that, we will not only defeat Trump, we will transform this country and create an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%.
Welcome, and thank you for joining our Labor Day Town Hall with Senator Bernie Sanders to celebrate the work being done all across the country to expand the labor movement. I'm Misty Rebick, and I'll be co-moderating our event today with Senator Sanders. We have a great panel lined up for you with rank and file members and labor leaders from all across the country to celebrate this 2020 Labor Day weekend, but also talk about the work that is in front of us. And to kick off our event, it's my pleasure to welcome a long-standing fighter for the working class. Kathy Kennedy has been a registered nurse for 40 years. She currently works at Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Roseville, California. Kathy is a key leader in the union's RN Response Network, which deploys volunteer RNs to disaster-stricken areas to provide immediate aid and relief. Kathy is elect of California Nurses Association and National Nurses United Organizing Committee and is the Vice President of National Nurses United. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Misty. As we commemorate Labor Day this weekend, the labor movement, and indeed all the American people, are in an existential fight for our lives. We are coming together in the midst of the worst pandemic of our lifetime, where over 6 million people have been infected by COVID-19 and over 190,000 people have died so far. Tens of millions are out of work, are hungry. Many people are facing eviction from their homes and have no health care. And we are seeing a disproportionate impact of this pandemic on communities of color. African Americans, Native Americans, and Latinos are getting infected and dying from COVID-19 at much higher rates than whites, while also having experienced the highest rates of job loss. The Trump administration has failed miserably in its response to the pandemic, making a bad situation much worse, and all of us are paying a price. The November election could not be more important. Without exaggeration, it is a matter of life and death. Our nation simply cannot stand 4 more years of Donald Trump in the White House. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, nurses have been caring for patients on the front lines, and we have been putting our lives at risk every single day. Right now, nurses and other healthcare workers still do not have the optimal the personal protective equipment, PPE, we need to safely care for COVID-19 patients. You can see I'm so upset. And nurses are continuing to get infected and die from COVID-19 as a result. We all know that when nurses are not safe, patients are not safe. In addition to his utter failure to enact a comprehensive federal government response to tackle this pandemic, to keep American people safe, President Trump has also failed to protect working families who need guaranteed emergency paid sick leave, house relief, childcare, extended unemployment benefits, guaranteed health care for the millions who have lost their insurance or maybe never even had it to begin with. NNU was very proud to endorse Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And now we are united in supporting Joe Biden and doing everything possible to get him and Kamala Harris elected, because we need a president who will prioritize the safety and survival of the American people. It doesn't get any more basic than that. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have a comprehensive plan to contain this pandemic. And part of that is to listen to registered nurses and other frontline workers who have the expertise to get our country through this crisis. They strongly support imposing the emergency OSHA standard and have committed to fully enact the Defense Production Act to mass produce the PPE that we so desperately need. And they also support having the COVID-19 test and vaccine free for everyone in the country. So many of our loved ones, our coworkers, and our neighbors who have died needlessly from this pandemic. And we also need to remember the great words of Mother Jones: pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. We must elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in November so we can save lives, recover from this pandemic, and have a fighting chance for progressive social change in this country. And I would urge all of our union sisters and brothers, everyone in the progressive movement, and all Americans to please vote like your life and your family lives depend on it, because they do. And now it is with great honor and privilege for me to introduce a dear friend of the nurses everywhere and of National Nurses United especially, a champion of so many causes that we hold dear, a man who has stood up for the working class and the labor movement his entire career, the United States Senator from the state of Vermont, Bernie Sanders. Bernie?
Kathy, thank you so much. And thank you for all of the work that you are doing. Thank you for the incredible heroism of nurses all over this country who are putting their lives on the line to save fellow Americans. Thank you for being part of a great trade union that understands that we have got to expand the trade union movement if people in this country are going to earn decent wages and have decent benefits. So Kathy Kennedy, thanks so much, and thanks to the National Nurses United. I just want to say a few words before we get to our very, very good panel. What we are trying to do this afternoon is just to reach out to rank and file union leaders all across this country to tell us what they are seeing on the front lines, what people are actually experiencing during this terrible economic crisis that we are facing, and talk to us about where they want this country to go into the future. I don't have to tell anybody listening that we are now in the worst economic moment in this country's history since the Great Depression. And what that means is that tens of millions of Americans have lost their jobs. It means that people today, as Kathy indicated, have lost their health care. We now have some 90 million Americans who are uninsured, no health insurance at all, or underinsured, large deductibles and co-payments. We have millions of families today who are having a difficult time feeding their kids and themselves. And we're seeing families all over this country stressed out over the possibility of getting evicted from their apartments or losing their homes. And as Kathy indicated, in the midst of all of that, we have a pandemic which has taken over 180,000 lives in this country. We have a president who has totally mishandled this crisis and made a very dangerous and bad situation a lot worse. So on this Labor Day, it seems to me that we've got to thank all of the workers out there who are working so hard to keep the economy going. And then a special thanks to the essential workers out there, the people who every day are putting their lives on the line. And at this moment on Labor Day weekend, we have got to acknowledge thousands and thousands of workers who have lost their lives. They lost their lives, Kathy indicated, in the medical profession, nurses, doctors, others. They've lost their lives working in grocery stores and public transportation, public safety. So today we acknowledge that terrible, terrible loss. And we reach out to those families and offer them our heartfelt condolences. But today we also have to understand
where the working class of this country is not only right now, but where it has been for the last 50 years. And here is a fact that we don't talk too much about. And that is that at a time when we have seen over the last 50 years, think about it, huge explosion in technology, huge increase in worker productivity. Every worker is producing a lot more than he or she did 40, 50 years ago. You know what? That average American worker today is not making a nickel more than he or she did in real inflation accounted for wages. And what we have seen over the last 50 years and what we are seeing today in an outrageous way is almost all of the new income and wealth being created in this country are going to the people on top 1%, top 2%. So what our struggle is about is to create a society and a government in which all of us have a decent standard of living. And that means understanding, as Kathy indicated, that healthcare is a human right, not a jobs benefit. And the National Nurses Union, and I want to thank them, National Nurses United, has been in the forefront of the struggle for Medicare for all, and we're going to win that fight. And we're going to win the fight taking on the pharmaceutical industry, which charges us, in some cases, 10 times more for prescription drugs than the people of other countries. And we're going to win the fight to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. The House of Representatives passed that last year. And if we can get a Democratic Senate, if we can get Joe Biden in the White House, every worker in this country will be earning at least $15 an hour. That's a pay raise for 40 million Americans. That is no small thing. And we're going to get equal pay for equal work, because women should not be making 75 or 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. And we're going to make sure that every kid in this country, regardless of his or her income, is able to get a higher education. And we're going to continue the fight, and Joe Biden strongly supports universal childcare and improved pre-K education. And we're going to go a long way towards starting to eliminate student debt, which is such an oppressive burden for so many people in this country. And we know that we can create millions of good paying jobs, which we desperately need right now when unemployment is so high, by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure at decent wages, union wages, and by combating climate change and transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And when we do that, we can create millions more jobs while we create a planet that our kids and grandchildren can live in. So there is an enormous amount of work that we have to do. And the immediate task right now is to defeat Donald Trump, who in my view is the most dangerous president in the history of this country. I mean, this is a president who is not only a pathological liar, this is a president who not only rejects science, whether it is the pandemic we're experiencing or climate change or other areas. This is a president who is leading us into an authoritarian society. And we got to be especially vigilant. This is a guy who says the only way he can lose the election at a time when he's behind in every national poll is if the election is rigged. So this is a man who doesn't believe in the rule of law, doesn't believe in the Constitution of the United States, and has betrayed the working class of this country that he told us in 2016 he was going to support. And just one word on that. You remember back in 2016, Trump told the workers of this country he was going to provide health care to everybody. Well, as you know, he is actively working to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have by eliminating the Affordable Care Act, which, by the way, would end the protections we now have for pre-existing conditions. So we have got to do everything that we can to defeat Donald Trump. Now, I know not everybody agrees with everything that Joe Biden is saying. Look, I ran against Biden, and his views are not as progressive as many of ours. That's simply the case. But on the other hand, he has some pretty good ideas. And I want to just take a second so you understand where Biden is coming from. He wants to raise that minimum wage to $15 an hour. That is very important. He believes in paid family and medical leave and guaranteeing every family in this country 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave. That is not insignificant. He believes that we should have universal pre-K education for every 3- and 4-year-old in this country. That's a big deal. He wants to make public colleges and universities and trade schools tuition free for working class families and move forward to lowering student debt in America. He wants to lower the cost of prescription drugs. He wants to rebuild our infrastructure and create millions of jobs doing that. So we have the immediate task of defeating Trump and electing Joe Biden. But on the day after Biden takes office, our job is to rally the American people around the agenda that we have fought for, a progressive agenda, which is the agenda of the American working class. So with that, let me thank you all again for being with us today. Thank Kathy for that introduction. And now it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce someone we have worked with for a number of years, and that is Sarah Lee Guthrie. Does that name Guthrie mean anything to you? Sarah is a wonderful entertainer in her own rights. Her father is Arlo Guthrie. Her grandfather is one of the great songwriters in the history of the United States, and that is Woody Guthrie. And Sarah is certainly following in that family tradition. So Sarah, thank you very much for being with us today and for performing.
There once was a Union maid who never was afraid of the goons and the ginks and the company finks and the deputy sheriffs who made the raid. She went to the Union Hall when a meeting it was called, and when the company boys come round, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. Well, this Union maid was wise to the tricks of the company spies. She never got fooled by a company stool. She'd always organize the guys. She always got her way when she struck for higher pay. She'd show her card to the company guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. We see the wicked roots and who all's in cahoots when workers rise to organize. Who's shaking in their boots? Will profit be our king? Do people mean a thing? The answer's clear, don't live in fear, just listen to me sing. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union. No, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking to the Union, I'm sticking
Great. Well, that was a wonderful performance from Sarah Lee Guthrie. What a fantastic song. Since we've started our event today, we've had people joining us from all across the country. We've got Cleo from Colorado, Malia from Los Angeles, California, Jacqueline from Clearwater, Florida, Michael from New Hampshire, Maggie from Charlotte, North Carolina, and people from all across the country in battleground states, Michigan, Arizona, Florida, Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us. We're about to get this panel started. I just wanted to make sure you know you can use the chat feature down at the bottom of your screen if you've joined our webinar to interact with the panelists and with each other. And then also, after we hear the remarks from all of our invited guests today, there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions, and you can do that by using the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. Let us know where you're writing in from, and we'll try to get your questions answered from this fabulous panel we have today. Thank you for joining us for this Labor Day special. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Senator. Let's get the panel started.
Thank you much, Misty. And wow, was Sarah Lee Guthrie great? We are so appreciative of her joining us today. I am pleased. We have great panelists today. And at the top of the list, our first panelist is Claude Cummings. Claude is a vice president of District 6 of the Communication Workers of America, the CWA, and he represents workers in his home state of Texas and also in Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma. Claude also leads the Human Rights Department for the National CWA. Claude, thanks so much for being with us. Why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on in your part of the world and where you want this country to move, the direction you want this country to move forward in. Claude, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Senator. Good afternoon, fellow comrades in our struggle for justice. Before I get to my remarks, I want to thank Senator Sanders for his support of labor and working people in general. Senator Sanders recently distributed an email petition to all of us asking that we add our names in support of expanded employment benefits and federal moratorium on evictions to support working families to get the Senate to act on the CARES Act. If you haven't seen it, do a search for it and sign it. Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Claude.
CWA represents both workers in the public sector and airline industry. Unfortunately, our public sector members are being adversely affected and their lives destroyed by the incompetent responses by this president, our Republican governor and lieutenant governor, who are demanding state agencies make drastic cuts to state services in Texas and threatening layoffs. The public sector employees who put their lives on the line daily under this pandemic, serving our most high-risk citizens. Well, we plan to lay off the governor and lieutenant governor in the 2022 state elections. Recently, in the airline industry, thousands of furloughs and layoffs were announced around the country because Mitch McConnell and the Republican majority won't get off their butts and pass the CARES Act, which would put both our public sector members and our airline members in better shape in this country. Well, how do we address these issues? We start changing the electorate, not just in Texas, but around the country. CWA and Progressive Allies have been building and organizing for years with the intent of getting us where we are today. Now in Texas, we are only 9 seats away from winning the majority in the House, something that has not happened in over 20 years. We came very close to electing a dynamic Congress member, Beto O'Rourke, to the U.S. Senate. Although he didn't win, in our 2 major cities, Houston and Dallas, Republicans don't hold a single seat due to what we have called the Beto effect and our new strategy for winning elections in Texas. So what is this new strategy? Specifically, CWA has radically changed the way we engage in Texas politics. We started with our members first by training and developing rank and file members, focusing on creating a deeper class analysis grounded in building worker power and sharpening our members' critique on corporate capitalism. This led to the expansion of our capacity and our ranks to engage in high-level political work in Texas. Secondly, we knew that in order to change Texas, we had to work not only with labor unions, but also community allies to give us the best chance for contending for real power in Texas. We have intentionally put ourselves in our progressive ecosystem in a position to contend for real power. Thirdly, we all came together to organize and engage communities of color. We used our financial resources, mobilization, and organizational skills, and most importantly, our voices to get out the vote. We should be operating this way in every state to change them from red to blue in this country. We all must understand the outcomes of elections have consequences. Consequences can be good, consequences can be bad. We are now suffering through the bad consequences of the last presidential election. Over 180,000 people dead because of incompetent leadership and an economy in ruins. Tax breaks for corporations and millionaires, jobs outsourced overseas, and anti-labor NLRB. As our country grapples with coronavirus and social unrest caused by racism and racial injustice, we all must understand it is no exaggeration to say this election will be the most important election of our lifetime. We all must, let me say that again, we all must remain committed to building political power for all working class people and elect leaders who will help create a more equal and just society. Thank you.
And maybe we'll get back to Claude later. I hope we will, because he has a real success story in telling us what grassroots organizing is doing in Texas. So Claude, thanks so much for being here and for what you're doing. Our next speaker is Ryan Bennett. Ryan is a second-generation union pipe fitter and welder and 20-year member of the West Michigan Plumbers, Fitters, and Service Trades Local 174. He is the business manager and financial secretary treasurer of the local, is president of the West Michigan Building Trades Council, and is president of the Lakeshore Community Labor Council, AFL-CIO. Ryan, thanks so much for being with us.
Greetings, Senator and panelists. It's my pleasure and honor to be with you today. Like you said, I've got the privilege to represent over 1,000 of the finest plumbers, pipe fitters, and HVAC service techs in the world from our little slice of heaven over here in West Michigan. I know we got to get to work because the day after the 2016 election, I was devastated. Our state, Michigan, the birthplace of the middle class, had just gone red, one of the deciding states for a Donald Trump victory. Unions in the state were already struggling ahead of that election. We've been through our 6th year of a Republican governor, Rick Snyder, and the Republicans held both chambers, the Supreme Court, the AG's office, and the Secretary of State. Organized labor, we were public enemy number one, and we were getting our butts kicked. There was no bipartisan, there was no negotiating. And in December of 2012, during a lame duck session, while the people were locked out of their own Capitol building, without a committee hearing, without amendments, the Republicans made Michigan a right to work state. They gutted our unemployment, our workers' comp, and in June of 2018, they repealed Michigan's prevailing wage law, which is our state's Davis-Bacon law. This law prevents contractors from winning publicly funded projects just because they pay their employees less. This repeal has triggered a race to the bottom in construction wages that we deal with in Michigan every single day. In November of 18, we finally got our stuff together a little bit. Labor got out, got to work a little bit more. We elected that woman from Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Governor Whitmer is pretty much the opposite of Donald Trump. She's smart, she listens to scientists, she's unafraid, and most importantly, she seeks to unite people instead of dividing them. That's the type of leadership we need in DC. Our union and unions in general, we can't take another 4 years of Donald Trump. If we do not elect Joe Biden, we should expect a national right to work law, and in the building trades, we should expect an effort to repeal Davis-Bacon, and we should expect that our Department of Labor registered apprenticeship programs, which we hold so very dear, will be replaced with watered down corporate IRAPs. We're here because we need every one of our working class brothers and sisters to understand there's simply too much at stake. Republicans have proven that they don't value working class people, they don't value union members, and they don't even value democracy. I don't want to wake up the day after this election devastated like I was in 2016, wondering if there was more that I could have done. Let's put in the work now so we can celebrate the day after this election. Thank you.
Ryan, thanks very much. Keep up the great work. It is now my pleasure to introduce Stacy Davis Gates. Stacy is the Vice President of the Chicago Teachers Union and the Executive Vice President of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. This past fall, Stacy helped lead a 15-day strike to win a historic contract and she has spearheaded citywide and statewide political and legislative campaigns. Stacy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for your courageous run for the White House. Thank you for front-loading workers, and thank you for standing with our educators in Chicago last fall amid everything. And look, we have a big deal in front of us. We have a president and an education secretary who are colossal failures. Their response to the pandemic has made our work significantly harder as educators, as parents, as members of this great country. That being said, it was workers across this country who front-loaded our response to this pandemic. It was our essential workers. It was our workers in our grocery stores and our nursing homes and our hospitals that have saved us. On the other hand, we have people in the White House making policy that is completely disconnected to the realities that we face across this country, and especially here in Chicago. In Chicago, we are going to need funds to make sure that the ventilation in our aging school buildings is fixed. And so it is safe for our students, safe for our workers. In Chicago, we are going to need a massive infusion of resources to ensure that when we return to our school buildings, that we return in a way that is not just safe, but helps us catch our students who depend on our school communities because our social safety net is, it doesn't exist. What America knows now, better than anything that they have understood before, is that our school communities, our workers, from the lunch lady to the teacher, to the speech pathologist, those are the individuals duct taping that social safety net, and that these are the individuals who are going to need investment when we return to our classrooms. But we can't return to our classrooms with Donald Trump as president. We already know his leadership has failed us. We already understand that Secretary DeVos is in over her head, and the best thing that she could do is resign immediately. We're going to need Joe Biden. We're going to need Kamala Harris to get us out of this deep state of depression, one in which people don't matter. Listen, workers have led. Workers have made sure of our survival. We're going to have to continue to lead. It doesn't stop at the ballot box. It continues beyond that. We're going to need to realize a country where our families are supported. Because in order to support public education, you're going to have to support families. We're going to have to make sure that everyone has health care. We're going to have to make sure that workers and their safety is prioritized. And look, on this Labor Day, I am reminded of the great sacrifices of those in the labor movement. I am reminded how workers hold this country up. When we look at those who have passed on as a result of our president's failed response to COVID, I see Black workers in the school building, Black workers on the buses, on the trains, Black workers who are in hospitals and nursing homes and grocery stores. Listen, we can overcome this terrible time, and workers are going to have to continue to lead. November is important. We got to get rid of Donald Trump, and we also have to get policies in place that strengthen worker protections, that give us safety, and that support our families. Thank you, Senator.
Stacy, thank you. We need great public school teachers. You are one of them. And thanks for the great work of the Chicago Teachers Union as well. Our next panelist is Peter Rickman. Peter serves as president of the Milwaukee Area Service and Hospitality Workers Organization in Wisconsin. In 2020, his union secured an industry-leading standard-setting contract with the NBA's Milwaukee Bucks, which includes a $15 an hour minimum wage and the protection of workers' rights to organize a union. Peter, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Bernie. 6 months ago, just before the pandemic hit, Milwaukee service workers celebrated. Through an organizing model that brought multiple employers to the table, 1,200 workers won that standard-setting contract. And workers at 3 more workplaces in downtown Milwaukee prepared their filings. to join the fold too. We passed a law at the city level that took effect that would ensure future downtown developments would be part of that framework as well. We had a model that was working. But today, 13 people are working. The workforce is laid off. The pandemic shut those workplaces down, but the failures of governance and misleadership from Trump and McConnell have kept the service sector working class out of work. Service workers have borne the brunt of this pandemic, whether it's the unemployed cook or the overworked CNA, the underprotected hospital housekeeper, or the marginally employed office cleaner. The president could have marshaled the resources and mobilized this nation. PPE, hazard pay, healthcare for all, income replacement. Instead, Trump and McConnell, through inaction, obstruction, and indifference, have made the working class suffer. To beat this pandemic and to make this economy work for the many, not the few, we need to defeat Donald Trump in November. But the truth is, as bad as the pandemic has been, as bad as the last 4 years have been, the last 4 decades, as Bernie said, have been a disaster for the working class. Trump, Reagan, Bush's, they pushed austerity and busted unions. They helped the billionaire class and boss class, Wall Street and the 1%, rig the system so that they could take the wealth that we working people create. And too often, Democrats stood by and didn't challenge that free market fundamentalism and economic royalism. Wages stagnant, living standards eroded, inequality skyrocketed. The good union jobs in factories and foundries, paper plants and steel mills that define this city, define my state, Wisconsin, define the Midwest, they're gone and they're not coming back. And they've been replaced by low-wage service sector jobs that immiserate the working class. They keep us, black, brown, and white, struggling and anxious. But the truth is, those industrial jobs that built the world's first middle class, they weren't always so great. They were the low-paid and insecure jobs of their time. But a workers' movement battled the bosses, took it to the ballot box on the streets, took it to the halls of government, and we pushed politicians to pass policies to balance the power between the boss class and the working class. We won union rights, living wages, and out of an incredible economic crisis and extreme inequality, we built that world's first middle class. We can win a new deal once again, a green new deal, a black and brown new deal, a pink collar, white collar, no collar new deal, a new deal for service sector working class people in the 21st century. Starts with a $15 an hour minimum wage on the way to 25. We got to make work pay again. Second, with Bernie leading a Democratic majority in the Senate, we can pass his workplace democracy plan for sectoral bargaining. Bring all the employers in an industry to the table so we can negotiate a union contract for everyone. Now, here in the service industry, we can't rely upon employer-based health insurance, not in a pandemic, not in normal times. That's why we need Medicare for all. And with Bernie chairing the Senate Budget Committee, we can keep up that struggle for healthcare by right. But there will be no progress with the working class on existential defense in a proto-fascist Trump regime emboldened by a re-election. We have got to change the landscape on which we struggle and organize. In 1932, FDR was no FDR. He was a middle-of-the-road Democrat. But he was no Hoover. And the industrial working class of Wisconsin and Michigan, Ohio and Pennsylvania put him in the White House and kept up that struggle. Not for Democratic politicians, but kept up the struggle for their demands. And today, the service sector working class here in the Midwest, especially here in Wisconsin, we can put Joe Biden in the White House with a wind at his back for the kind of economy we need. And we're going to do that through November, through January, through the next 4 years. Bartenders and baristas, CNAs, cleaners, cooks, whoever, we have got to make it happen here in Wisconsin and the upper Midwest. We'll decide this election. We'll decide the landscape on which we organize and struggle for what we need. So we got to register. We got to request our ballots. We got to return those absentee ballots. And come November 4th, we got to keep on raising hell. History is ours, and another world is possible that we can win, and the working class is going to make it with our two hands. One, to take our ballot to the box and cast that vote, and the other to raise a fist behind our demands. So on our way to November 4th and beyond, solidarity to you all, brothers and sisters. Let's get in this struggle and have a powerful Labor Day, sisters, brothers, siblings, and comrades. Thank you, Bernie, for having us here today with you.
Well, thank you, Peter, for the work you're doing and for your great comments today. Our next panelist is Andrew Dinkelacke, who is Secretary Treasurer of the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America, based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Andrew has served in many UE leadership positions. He joined the UE in the 1990s as a member of Local 223 and became a field organizer in 1997. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Bernie. And thank you, Friends of Bernie, for hosting this. It's very important that we have this kind of space to be able to have discussions about what's going on in 2020. especially with the COVID-19 virus going around and the ongoing attacks on working people, especially our essential services. Our union's a little union, but we're mighty proud of our tradition and our ability to fight. We believe in certain things in terms of how we operate. We believe in aggressive struggle, that you need to engage on the streets or on the shop floor in terms of fighting back for what you want. We also believe in rank and file control, meaning that the workers themselves should have a say on what's happening in their workplace. We also believe in political independence. And it was the workers themselves, the delegates, that were so proud in making nomination, second nomination to endorse Bernie Sanders during his campaign. We also believe in international solidarity, that we're a part of a global family and that we need to figure out how to combat against international corporations. And we believe that the only way we can do this is by uniting all workers. Everybody has to be in this. And as part of that, we felt it was important to discuss, the concept of the them, the 1%, the billionaire class that has always been pointed out, and the us, which is the rest of us. If you're a wage earner and you have to rely on your earnings to pay the bills, pay your rent, cover medicine, then you're part of the rest, the 99%. And there's no difference there between us in terms of that class consciousness, that class mentality. And this is something that is coming from, we're based out of Pittsburgh. We're a national organization representing tens of thousands. We have a few thousand here in the Pennsylvania area, a battleground state, so to speak. And we believe that in order to counter this, you have to engage the membership. You have to have one-on-one conversations, and you have to listen. You have to say, what is going on in your life? What's happening, and share what your experiences are with them. And those are the kind of conversations that need to happen. And they're happening up in Erie at our local 506 and 618. They're engaged in conversations there about how people are being shafted, how their family members are being shafted on all the different ways that Bernie Sanders had mentioned in his earlier speeches. And we have to talk about, what does it mean? I mean, we've all been facing this kind of heel on our backs for many, many years, economically, socially, materially, in terms of healthcare and such. And we have to be able to say that there's righteous anger there. And especially for our working white class members in Pennsylvania, we have to recognize, what is it that you used to have that you don't have anymore? That's a tragedy. And you have to recognize, what was it and where does it go? How do we get ourselves out of this? And as unionists, we look at it from the perspective of, we have to do it together. If you're being injured, we're all being injured. And we got to figure out how to help each other, how to pull each other up. Not use the tactics of, well, I'm going to take something away from you because I don't have it. We have to figure out how to talk about, how do I do something for all of us, for me, you, and everyone, and figure out how to do that together. And where do we go with that feeling? And how does it make you feel when you actually work to support each other in that effort, instead of working off of the hatred that you have for each other? So these are the types of difficult conversations that we have to have with each other. And the idea of saying, well, with Biden or whatever candidate is there, we have to look at it in the context that our previous panelists said. Is any one of these individuals helping us to make a better environment for us to be able to mobilize our own members, to be able to fight back against the multinational employers, to say, this is what we want and we deserve it, as well as to organize the unorganized? We have a massive amount of people that are not in unions today, and that if they had a voice in a rank and file controlled organization, doesn't have to be us, it could be any labor union, but it has to be a union that treats their members with respect. And if they do that, and if they work together, and then they collaborate with each other on that, that's the steps that are going to need to be taken in order to change the agenda, which is favoring the 1%, and take the finger off of the scales towards the 1% and move it towards the rest of us. And that's the type of efforts that we need to do. So that means we have to be visible. That means that we have to have yard signs out there saying, I'm not voting for Trump or I'm for Biden. but it has to declare who we are and that we're part of this, that we're not alone. And so I'm very grateful for the fact that these kind of events are being held so that people can share their experiences, share their concerns, but also to pump each other up and say, look, we're in this for the long haul. This is about not only taking things on the national stage, but it's also about taking things on the local stage. Here in Pittsburgh, we're proud to have endorsed Summer Lee, Representative Summer Lee, who is part of a good crew of people that is part of a progressive wave that's happening in Pennsylvania and some of these areas. And that's the kind of effort that when you have an election, you don't look at it as just a one-off. You look at it as, what else can we be doing during that election? Are there other candidates that we could be supporting up and down the line in terms of school boards or you know, at the county level? That's what we need to be looking at, and we need to look at it in terms of, are they helping us to secure our rights and our abilities to get what we justly deserve? So that's the kind of conversations I know we need to have in Pennsylvania. We need to certainly have it between our white brethren, as well as all sorts, because we're a union for everyone. Thank you, Bernie.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for all the great work the UE has done and is doing. Our next panelist is Cecily Mayart Cruz, who is a teacher, an activist, and the president of United Teachers Los Angeles in California, one of the nation's largest teachers union. Cecily has taught for 26 years at both elementary and middle school levels. Cecily, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. I'm so proud to be in this place with all of you. We know that the labor movement needs to unite like never before to get that man out of the White House. To say that Trump's leadership has been a failure is to soft pedal what an immoral, dangerous president he has been. Children in cages, an education agenda with the single goal of tearing down public schools. Thousands of Americans every day dying of COVID-19. Tax giveaways to corporations while 30 million Americans are out of work, and homelessness and food insecurities grow. The rise of white nationalism and Trump's open defense of racists. We are at a crossroads of horror and hope. The horror of another 4 years of Trump, or the hope of change. There is hope in the vibrant youth leaders being born before our very eyes, who are feeling their power and who are not submitting to the world they've been handed. They are the students that we teach, and they are leading the way. There is hope in collective action. United Teachers Los Angeles is 34,000 members strong, and we are using our united power to protect the health and safety of our teachers and students from COVID-19 and demand the supports our communities need to survive this pandemic, such as paid sick leave for all parents, rent and housing support, and Medicare for all. We are using our united power to fight systemic racism and unapologetically say that Black Lives Matter. In this moment of national reckoning, of national rage, we can no longer be silent to this fact. In the context of a pandemic that impacts communities of color disproportionately, our communities need dramatically more in this moment, not less. No issue can be siloed. You cannot reopen schools safely if families don't have decent health care. You can't have thriving school communities if families are kicked out of their homes because they can't pay rent. There is no way Trump will deliver on what we need. We need a change in the White House. We have a duty to show up strong in this election, and I am inspired by the folks on this virtual call. The time is now to be bold. The time is now to act. This is our election to win, and we can do this. It is up to us. Thank you again for having me on this panel.
Well, Cecily, thank you so much for what you're doing and what teachers in LA are doing and public school teachers all over America are doing. So thank you for being with us. Our last panelist, before we open up the discussion, is, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Kwaku Hajiman, who is an SEIU member who lives in Alexandria, Virginia. Kwaku has worked part-time as a contracted wheelchair agent at National Airport for the past 7 years, earning a living wage he helped secure through his union. Kwaku, thanks so much for being with us.
My name is Kwaku Hajiman. I work at the National Airport as a wheelchair agent. We are fighting for paid sick leave, affordable health insurance, and a bailout for the airlines to safeguard our jobs. We need to join together, because when we join together, we become strong. We have influence and power to vote against Trump, because Trump has, from the beginning, does not like the union. It doesn't like us. It doesn't like law workers. He has denigrated all the institutions of democracy, and even blocking the Congress to pass the appropriate legislation that will help us improve ourselves. So, Senator, my fellow leaders, union leaders, what do we do across all organized labor to defeat Donald Trump?
Okay, thank you very much for that video. All right, let me open it up to folks on the panel, and then Misty, we have time for questions to be asked by people watching. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a few minutes and we've got some good questions.
All right, let me start off by asking a rather provocative question. And that is, it is no great secret that there are a lot of working people in this country, predominantly white working class people, who are voting for Donald Trump. Why is that? And what are we going to do about that? Who has thoughts on that?
I'll start, Senator Sanders. This is Claude. In CWA, we are educating our membership. I mean, we're talking to them about the reasons why we're having issues at the bargaining table. We're talking to them about why we don't have, more money, better benefits at the bargaining table, why we can't win some of the things that we want to win. And we're telling them it doesn't make sense to vote against your own best interest.
You go. That is the issue, Claude.
Yeah, that's it,
All right. There are a lot of angry people out there, and we got to focus that anger where it belongs.
Right.
Against Trump, against the corporate elite that has contempt for working people, not against each other.
Exactly.
All right, other thoughts? Who wants to jump in on this? Why are workers voting for Donald Trump? And what do we do about it?
I'll chime in, Senator. We represent a lot of the demographic that you just spoke of, and we are hitting them in the face constantly with economic differences and labor platforms, between the Biden platform and just Trump's abysmal labor record. And we're trying to get it off of the social issues every single chance we get. We're putting together concise bits of information, and we're going to hit them on every social media platform, via text, via phone, until they're actually courageous enough to have that conversation with their union leadership.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. That's exactly right. Who else wants to jump in on that issue?
Bernie, if I could just say something quick.
Yep.
I think it's, everybody here knows systemic racism is built into the fabric of this country. It's our original sin in founding this nation. So I think we have to run right at it. And our union represents and organizes a multiracial service sector working class. And we go right at race and talk about if we don't transform this country and undermine the systemic racism that's undermining the interests of the working class, we aren't going to be able to defeat the corporations that have shipped the good jobs overseas and impoverish us with poverty, with incredibly low wages and deny us healthcare. So we run right at that. But the truth is, we need Democrats who are running for office, not just out there saying, well, we got to vote against Donald Trump. We need folks who are saying, vote for us. because we will take on the billionaires in the boss class, Wall Street and the 1%, raise wages, make it possible for you to organize a union, and ensure that you've got a pension and a decent life for your family. Maybe you can send your kid to college. I think we need Democrats out there offering up an affirmative, aggressive agenda for transforming society. So we as trade unionists and organizers have to run right at race and talk about racial and economic injustice and inequality together. And then we need politicians who are carrying forward an agenda to transform our lives and our communities.
Okay. What would it mean? Let me change direction a little bit. I have believed and introduced the major legislation in Congress to make it easier for workers to join unions. Because I believe there are millions and millions of workers out there who know the benefits of joining a union in terms of high wages, better working conditions, but often they are thwarted by illegal corporate activities. All right, what would it mean in this country if we made it easier for workers to join a union? If we had a situation where 50% plus one of workers signed a card saying they wanted to be a union and they had a union and began negotiating a first contract, what would that mean to America?
Senator, I think that America is better if we have workers organizing at every level. Look, we know that women are going to make more money. We know that we can ensure living wages and health care for workers. Right now, labor is leading the way and keeping America safe. If not but for labor, we would not have the essential services that we need in this moment. The access to PPE for our healthcare workers would probably still be in queue and not in the spaces where they work. Let's be very clear. Organized labor at this point in our American space have given us an opportunity to maintain a wage in the middle of an economic depression. It has given us an opportunity to keep people safe. It has given educators in Chicago the ability to push back against Donald Trump forcing us back into schools that we know that are unsafe. Labor has been absolutely essential to ensuring safety, wellness, and an American worker and the protections for their family.
All right. In other words, thank you, Stacey. In other words, what Stacey is saying is common sense. If you're out there by yourself and you're making $11 an hour and you don't have any paid family and medical leave and you got nothing, you have no power by yourself. But when you are organized and when you're going up to your employer united, saying, you know what, we want a living wage, we want decent working conditions, that's when you can make some real progress. That's what Stacey is saying. That's what I think most Americans understand. And that is why we need real reform in terms of the ability of workers to join unions. We're going to open it up to our anybody out there who has some questions. Please, Ms. Lee, let's do it.
Okay, let's start with this question just on the aspect of organizing that we've already been talking about. This comes from Francisco Yanis from Miami, Florida. Francisco asks, how can professionals as a pharmacist organize in unions in spite of corporation opposition to it?
Well, we're going to try to make it easier, but for a start, as one of our panelists mentioned, I think it was Andrew, contact the union. Contact the union, get some advice, see what union is best able to handle your particular issues. Some unions focus on this, some unions focus on that. Find the best union for you, talk to them, and go forward. But what we are going to do in Congress, especially if Biden is elected, is pass the Workplace Democracy Act, which says that if 50% of the workers in a unit plus one sign a card saying they want to be a member of the union, they are a member of a union. And if an employer refuses to engage in very serious negotiations for a first contract, that employer will be heavily penalized. So, other questions, Misty?
Sure. This one is, we already kind of talked about it, but how do we reflect our honest desire for supporting a progressive agenda and still be excited about Biden and Harris? This comes from Therese Johansson in Santa Cruz, California.
Well, let me answer that, and anyone else can jump in afterwards. I don't care if you're excited or not. Cast your damn vote. You got to vote. It's a vote. Doesn't say on it, I'm really excited or I'm not so excited. It is a vote. As every panelist has told us today, it is absolutely imperative for the working class of this country, for our kids, for our parents, that Trump be defeated and Biden be elected. But that is not the end of the game. Biden has a decent agenda on a number of issues, not good enough on a number of other issues. Our job, led by the labor union movement, is the day after Biden is elected to stand up and say, Mr. President, leaders in the House, leaders in the Senate, now you're going to listen to what the working class of this country wants. You're going to pass an agenda that works for us and not just wealthy campaign contributors. So this is, and you've heard that word before from several of the panelists, an existential moment in American history. For the sake of our country, for democracy, for the planet, for our kids, Trump cannot be reelected. Do everything that you can to defeat him and elect Biden. And the day after Biden's inaugurated, we're going to get to work.
Bernie, if I could add,
Sure.
what I would say is the excitement is actually in meeting the other people that are fighting with you, that are doing the work on the ground, that are trying to get others to be interested in participating and casting the vote, because it's those connections that you're going to be building off of to say, hey, do you agree with me on these issues? Okay, let's start doing something here locally. And it's building those connections that really is the exciting part of this work, is that you don't know who you're going to meet or what kind of connections you're going to, and you're opening your door wide open to the universe to say, I'm ready. I want to take this on. Who's with me on doing this? That's where the excitement is going to be. It's not going to be because of one particular candidate that did it. It's
Good.
going to be because of the ground grassroots works that we're doing here. Day
Well
in and
said, Andrew. Okay, Misty, you got other questions?
Yeah, we've had this question from several people, so I'm going to try to sum it up. But basically, we've got Shelley from Washington State. We've got Lori King from Oregon asking, what do we do if Trump loses and he won't leave office? People are very concerned that Trump is threatening, in lots of ways that the election may be rigged, and if he loses, he won't leave. So, Senator, I know this is something you've been talking about.
Well, it's something we are working on right now, and we're going to continue to work on over the next several months until Election Day. I think the fear is absolutely legitimate. Now, you got a president out there who, while he is behind in every national poll, not to say that polls can't change, they can, but today he's behind in every national poll, behind in most battleground state polls. This guy says, well, if I lose the election, the only reason for that is the election is rigged. That's the only way we can possibly lose, because God knows everybody loves me and they're all going to vote for me. So what we have got to do is work in a number of ways. And one of the ways is, I'm working on this right now, is to demand that both the House and the Senate hold hearings right now to educate the American people about what might happen and to develop antidotes to that. But several points should be made. Number one, and the American people have got to know this, that most Democrats, for whatever reason, will be voting in mail-in ballots. That is why Trump is trying to kill mail-in ballots. And that it is very likely that this election will not be decided on election night. It may carry over. So we've got to educate the American people about what is in front of us and rally the American people to tell Donald Trump that too many people in this country have fought and died to defend American democracy. And if and when you lose, you're getting out of office.
Senator, put me down as one of the volunteers to go in and help pull him out of the White House.
All right, we got that. You're prepared to carry some of his golden furniture out the door? Is that what you're saying? All right.
And him along with it.
Okay, Misty, what else you got?
Sure. So we have a question about the party platform. Why did the party platform not include Medicare for all, and how do we convince them to change it? This is coming from Mark in Plymouth, Michigan.
Look, I mean, let's be clear, and this is what, what the progressive movement is, I hope and believe, is we are fairly sophisticated. We know what we believe in. And I believe, I think everybody on this panel believes, most of you understand that the current healthcare system is dysfunctional, it is cruel, and it is extraordinarily wasteful. You tell me why we end up spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other country, and yet we have over 90 million people who are uninsured, underinsured. We have God knows how many people going bankrupt because they can't pay off their medical bills. We're paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We're the only country on a major country that doesn't guarantee healthcare as a human right. You lose your job in America, you lose your healthcare. It's all insane. It's all totally absurd. But let's acknowledge, you got a healthcare industry that makes billions every year. They are enormously powerful. End of discussion. That is the reality. Now, I don't want to get into it at great length. Biden does not agree with me, doesn't agree with you about Medicare for all, and that healthcare is a human right, and that's the direction. He wants to expand the Affordable Care Act. His ideas will help a lot of people. I think they will lower the cost of prescription drugs, do some good. But at the end of the day, we are going to have to, in my view, take on the greed, irresponsibility of the healthcare industry, of the drug companies, and move finally to a Medicare for all, where everybody in this country, regardless of your income, you walk into any doctor's office you want, any hospital you want, you get all of the healthcare that you need. You do not take out your wallet or your credit card. Does that sound like a radical idea? Well, guess what? I'm talking to you right now from Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from where I'm talking to you in Canada. That is exactly what is going on. They spend half as much per capita. The quality of their care is as good or better, and everybody in that country has health care. So what we have got to do is move Biden. As I said earlier, the day after the election, we continue the fight. In the House, we got dozens and dozens and dozens of members fighting for Medicare for all. We have many in the Senate as well. So we're going to keep up that pressure.
All right, I think we have time for two more questions. This one, we've already touched on, but people keep asking very similar questions. And this one is from Catherine Johnson. She says, what do you say to people who are planning to vote Green Party?
I'm sorry, planning to vote what?
Green Party.
Look, maybe I'm the best qualified person in the world to answer that because I'm the longest serving independent, non-Democrat, not Republican in American political history. There's a time and a place. There is a time and a place for third-party politics. If you're in a local election today, you're not happy with the Democrat, you're not happy with the Republican, support your third-party candidate. This, though, on the national level, is not that moment. This is, as I mentioned earlier, and as other panelists have mentioned, the most important election in the modern history of this country, maybe going way back to 1864, and whether we continue the fight against slavery or not. If Trump is reelected, we will rapidly move away from democracy, from our Constitution, from the rule of law. We cannot allow that to happen. The most important thing that we can do right now is to defeat Trump. That has to happen. And the day after the election, we're going to rally the American people around a progressive agenda. So I would say that if you are living in a state where your vote will make a difference in the defeat of Donald Trump, vote for Joe Biden, please.
And then I think this is a great one to kind of go around and get different folks, but what are different unions across the country doing to mobilize for the election? This comes from Riley in Chicago, Illinois, specifically for you, Kathy. But I know folks on the call or on the video can respond to this one. What are we doing across the country? What are unions doing for this election?
We are phone banking. We are sending texts. We are really mobilizing because it is so important. As a nurse every day, we see people that are dying, and as Senator Sanders said, we've got to get them out of the White House. We can't take 4 more years. People are dying right now, right now. And so we are really getting our people, we are mobilizing, we are phone banking like no tomorrow to make sure that we get that vote out and that we get Trump out. We have to kick him out. So that's what we're doing.
This is Claude. We're working, our membership and mobilizing our members, but we all need to understand that labor does not have the numbers alone to help win this election. So we've got to go outside our membership and work with other coalitions. That's how we're winning in Texas. And in Texas, we have now more African Americans living in Texas than any other state in this country. We have determined if we get 1.5 million registered into the poll to vote, we win Texas. And if once we take Texas and we turn Texas blue, there'll never be another Republican president in our lifetime. So we all need to understand that we need to work very hard with people outside, different coalitions, build coalitions, work with them. We need to build our capacity so we can win this election.
Well said.
I think Claude's totally right. The institutional union movement on our own, we're 10% of the working class. We don't have enough of our numbers, but the working class is the majority in this country. And so what we're doing here in Wisconsin, the swing state of swing states, is we're going out and talking to other service sector working class people. We got healthcare workers calling the 330,000 non-union healthcare workers in Wisconsin, talking about what does it mean to win this election at the federal level and at the state level right now. What could change for healthcare workers? We're talking to, as I said before, the bartenders and baristas, the cooks and the clerks, the CNAs and the cleaners here in Milwaukee, Black, brown, and white working class people who are not in our union about what this election means. So we got to make sure that every single one of those folks registers to vote, requests a ballot, and returns it. But along the way, we need to raise hell to frame the choice in this election. So on Thursday, we're going down to our U.S. Senator's office, Ron Johnson, an awful colleague of Senator Sanders here, and we are going to start bird dogging that guy everywhere he goes, and maybe places he doesn't go, to demand that he support saving the 600. We're going to make this election about what the working class needs. Extend those unemployment benefits, health care for all, raise wages. If we make this election a referendum on what working class people need, we don't have to have just union members carrying the load. The whole working class can. So we win in November and beyond.
Senator Sanders.
Yep.
Here in Los Angeles, I mean, it's critical. It's critically important to not only win in November, but it's also about voting down ballot, because we have school board elections that are in play, as well as funding revenue streams that we desperately need for our babies. It is going to take us crossing the aisle. It's going to take us talking and speaking to community members, definitely students who can vote. This is going to be an all-out effort. And so that is what we have to bring, that collective action and collective muscle. And then the next day after the election, start pressing everyone around a progressive agenda that gets what we need as workers.
Well said, Cicely, well said. And Cicely's point is right on. Obviously, the presidential election is of unbelievable consequence, but there are a lot of other elections. There are a lot of other ballot items that you have got to be voting in as well. And I would tell all of you that over the last couple of years, we have made as progressives enormous progress in electing some great members of the Congress, great members in state legislatures all across this country, district attorneys. We are making progress. Keep up that effort.
So we have heard a lot from the panelists today. Thank you for sharing your stories. You have heard it over and over again. We need to plot, plan, strategize, and organize and vote. So our call to action to you today is Senator Sanders is going to continue to hold town halls like this all across the country in key battleground states. You have the opportunity to hear what's happening across the country from people on the ground. And to do that, you got to join the political revolution. You go to BernieSanders.com, sign up, and we will keep you up to speed on the events we are having. In addition, you need to register to vote. And if you're not sure if you're registered to vote, you can go to vote.org and you can figure out if you're registered, how to register, and make sure that you find your polling place. And if you can absentee ballot, get your ballot in sooner than later. We expect there's going to be a lot more ballots coming in through the mail because of the pandemic. So we want to give our, our good buddies in the Postal Service the time to count those votes. So with that, thank you to the panelists, and I'm going to turn it to you, Senator, to what is the final word to everybody watching today?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for who has watched this great panel, and a special thanks to all of our panelists, not only for being with us this afternoon, but to thank each and every one of them for having devoted their lives to improve life for working people all over this country. It's a great panel, great people. Let's keep going together. Let's defeat Trump, and let's make sure that finally, we have a government that represents all of us and not just the 1%. So thank you all very much. See you soon.
Which side are you on? 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 Come on, all good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the good old Union is coming here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Don't fall for their tactics. Don't listen to their lies. Us working folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Oh, which side are you on? 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 Will we build infrastructure or build a bigger wall? Will you vote for corporate cuts or Medicare for all? Oh, which side are you on? 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 Will you hoard your billions or share your gifts with mine? Are you with the 1% or with the 99? Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you